Is that a problem for you, Bart? Does that does that make them historically unreliable? The fact that there was, a freedom to tell the story in different ways in this way?
Well, it certainly makes them unreliable, but it's not a problem for me because I think that is what the storytellers were doing. They were changing their stories as they told them. And so the Gospels are filled with changed stories. I think that's absolutely right. So, but I want to disagree on one point that Richard made, that the sayings of Jesus are preserved fairly accurately and intact. And he says the reason for that is that if you compare them across the Gospels, the sayings look very much the same. And I completely disagree with that. For two reasons. One, it's true, they look very much the same. When you look at sayings in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they look very much the same, but it's for the reason that Richard himself has just alluded to. Matthew got many of his stories from Mark, and so did Luke. Matthew and Luke also used another source that scholars have called Q. And so why do the sayings in Matthew and Luke look so much alike? It's because they're actually copying from the same source. So we're agreed on that. Does that show that the sayings were never changed? Well, really? Look at the Gospel of John. In the Gospel of John, Jesus has long, lengthy discourses that are not at all like you find in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. Or look at the Gospel of Thomas. It's 114 sayings of Jesus. About half of them are nothing at all like you find in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It is absolutely clear and certain that Christians are changing the sayings of Jesus. The reason it doesn't look that much that way to people who just read the Gospels is because they read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and you have all of these parables that are the same, these one-liners that are the same, and the reason they're the same is that they're all copying from the same source. It doesn't mean that people aren't changing the saying.